You are sitting in a waiting room. Nothing is happening. The magazine in front of you is 3 years old. Your phone is dead. There is nothing to look at, nothing to do. And within 60 seconds, something strange begins to crawl under your skin. A restlessness, an itch you cannot scratch, a feeling so uncomfortable it makes you want to stand up, pace the floor, or start reading the legal disclaimers on a hand sanitizer bottle just to make it stop. That feeling has a name: boredom. And here is the thing almost nobody tells you. No other animal on Earth experiences it the way you do. A dog left alone in a house does not get bored the way you do. A crow perched on a wire is not mentally suffering through the passage of time. A chimpanzee, your closest living relative, sharing roughly 99% of your DNA, does not stare at the ceiling wondering when something interesting will happen. But you do. And the reason why reaches back millions of years to something that changed the course of life on this planet. Boredom is not a flaw in your brain. It is one of the most sophisticated cognitive experiences any creature has ever evolved. And the fact that you feel it is proof of something remarkable about what you are. Let us start with a question researchers have been quietly debating for decades. What actually is boredom? It sounds obvious. Boredom is when you have nothing to do. But that is not quite right. You can be surrounded by things to do and still feel bored. You can be in the middle of a task and feel it settle over you like a fog. John Eastwood, a psychologist at York University, defines boredom as the unfulfilled desire for satisfying engagement, not the absence of stimulation, the absence of meaning in stimulation. That distinction is everything. Your brain is not complaining that nothing is happening. It is complaining that nothing happening feels worth your attention. And your brain, unlike the brain of almost any other creature alive, is capable of making that distinction. Think about what it takes to experience boredom as you experience it. First, you need a mind that craves meaning, not just sensation. Second, you need a sense of time passing, an awareness that this moment is dragging on, that you are somehow stuck. Third, you need a theory of mind, the ability to imagine a different version of yourself doing something more interesting somewhere else. And fourth, you need the capacity to feel that gap, the distance between where you are and where you wish you were, as a form of suffering. Most animals have none of these. A fish does not imagine a better version of its afternoon. A cat waiting by a mouse hole is not bored. It is focused, its entire nervous system narrowed to a single point of attention. Even great apes, brilliant as they are, show only faint shadows of the boredom you experience. They seek novelty, they explore. But the grinding existential restlessness of a human with nothing to do? That appears to be ours alone. So why did evolution give you this? To understand that, you have to go back to the moment human cognition began to diverge from everything else on the tree of life. Around 300,000 years ago, something shifted in the architecture of the human brain. The prefrontal cortex, the region behind your forehead responsible for planning, imagination, and abstract thought, expanded dramatically. This gave your ancestors the ability to do something no other animal could do at scale: simulate futures that did not exist yet. Your ancestors could sit by a fire and think, what if I moved to the valley beyond the ridge? What if I tried a different way of trapping the deer? What if there was a better tool for cutting this hide? They were not just reacting to the world. They were mentally rehearsing versions of it. Anthropologist Michael Tomasello has argued that this capacity for what he calls shared intentionality, the ability to project yourself into possible futures and compare them to your present, is the defining cognitive leap of our species. And boredom is what happens when that engine has no fuel. Your brain is a simulation machine. It evolved to constantly generate possible futures, test them against the present, and motivate you to act toward the better ones. When your environment gives you nothing worth simulating, nothing to plan toward, nothing to optimize, the machine does not shut off. It spins. It generates restlessness. It produces that crawling discomfort that forces you to seek out something, anything, that feels worth engaging with. Boredom is not your brain doing nothing. Boredom is your brain screaming that it was built for more than this. There is a study that makes this point more vividly than almost any other. In 2014, Timothy Wilson at the University of Virginia put participants alone in a room with nothing to do for 15 minutes. They had the option to sit quietly or press a button that would deliver a mild electric shock to themselves. You would assume everyone would simply sit quietly. You would be wrong. About 67% of men and 25% of women chose to shock themselves rather than endure unoccupied silence. Some participants shocked themselves multiple times. The researchers described this as evidence that people prefer doing something over doing nothing, even when the something is painful. Think about that. Your brain finds physical pain more tolerable than boredom. It would rather generate a sensation, any sensation, than endure the void of unengaged existence. But why would evolution build something that feels so bad? Because it works. Boredom is a motivational state. It is not a malfunction. It is a signal, the same way hunger is a signal, the same way pain is a signal. Hunger tells you that your body needs energy and motivates you to seek food. Pain tells you that your body is being damaged and motivates you to stop. Boredom tells you that your mind is being underused and motivates you to seek engagement. Sandy Mann, a psychologist at the University of Central Lancashire, describes boredom as a search for neural stimulation that the thinker cannot generate from their current environment. For your ancestors, that signal had survival consequences. A mind that was comfortable doing nothing was a mind that was not solving problems, not exploring new territories, not developing new tools, not building new social alliances. A mind made restless by idleness was a mind constantly driven to produce, create, and improve. That restlessness was a competitive advantage. It is, in a real sense, why civilization exists. Every painting on a cave wall, every agricultural technique discovered by trial and error, every ocean crossed in a vessel someone built because they were not satisfied standing on the shore. Boredom drove all of it. There is another dimension to boredom that makes it uniquely human, and it is one researchers have only recently begun to explore in depth. Boredom is connected to your sense of self. When you are bored, you are not just understimulated, you are experiencing a temporary loss of meaning. The philosopher Albert Camus described boredom as the first step toward awareness of the absurd, that lurching moment when you suddenly notice that the mechanical nature of your days lacks any self-evident purpose. That sounds bleak, but it is also a cognitive capacity. You have to be able to ask, what is the point of this, in order to feel bored? Most animals cannot ask that question. You can. Andreas Elpidorou, a philosopher at the University of Louisville, argues that boredom functions as a regulatory state. It alerts you that your current pursuits do not reflect what actually matters to you, and it motivates you to return to meaningful activity. In other words, boredom is your inner compass. When you are deeply absorbed in something that matters, boredom vanishes. When you are drifting through something hollow, it arrives. It is your mind reporting the difference between time spent and time lived. This also explains why boredom tends to intensify as human societies become more comfortable. In a survival environment, every waking moment has an obvious purpose. Find food, avoid predators, maintain shelter, strengthen alliances. Your cognitive engine always has fuel. But as societies developed, as food became abundant, as immediate threats receded, the brain suddenly found itself with excess capacity and no natural outlet for it. The restlessness did not go away. It just went searching. This is why humans play games. Why you tell stories. Why art exists. Why religion, philosophy, sports, theater, music, and mathematics all emerged. They are not accidents of culture. They are the products of minds that could not stop churning. Minds that had to find a way to feed the simulation engine when survival demands were not doing it for them. Aristotle understood something close to this more than 2,000 years ago. He wrote that the highest human activities were those pursued for their own sake, not for any external reward. Contemplation, philosophy, the pursuit of truth. He called this eudaimonia, often translated as flourishing, and he described it as what happens when human capacities are fully exercised. What he was describing, without the language of neuroscience, was a mind that is not bored, a mind running at its proper frequency. There is one final layer to all of this that researchers are now beginning to investigate: the relationship between boredom and creativity. Several studies, including work by Mann and Cadman published in 2014, have found that boring tasks appear to increase creative output on subsequent tasks. Participants who completed a dull copying exercise before a divergent thinking test performed better on the creativity test than those who had been engaged in interesting activities. The theory is that boredom forces the mind into a kind of low-stimulation wandering state, the same state associated with daydreaming and the default mode network, the region of the brain that is active precisely when you are not focused on anything in particular. And the default mode network, it turns out, is one of the most creative regions in the brain. It is where unexpected connections form, where new ideas surface unbidden, where the mind synthesizes experience into insight. Your most original thoughts often arrive not when you are grinding away at a problem, but when you have stepped away from it entirely. In the shower, on a long walk, in that drowsy moment before sleep. These are the moments when the simulation engine is idling, free to roam across everything you know and collide ideas that had never met before. Boredom, in other words, is not the enemy of creativity. It is the precondition for it. And this brings us back to that waiting room, to the magazine 3 years old, to your dead phone and the hand sanitizer disclaimer. That restlessness you feel? It is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is a sign that something is profoundly right. It is the sound of a brain that evolved to build and imagine and create, refusing to accept that there is nothing worth its attention. Every animal alive experiences time, but only you experience time as something that can be wasted. Only you look at an empty hour and feel the pull of everything it could have been. That is not a burden. That is the most human thing about you. And the next time boredom finds you, it might be worth listening to what it is actually trying to say. It is not telling you that nothing is happening. It is telling you that you were made for something more. And somewhere in the history of your species, that feeling changed the world.